Hello, this is a video answer key for my proportional representation in Denmain worksheet. Alright, so I made a fake country called Denmain and gave it 80 million fake voters. And in order to keep things nice and simple, I made an only 11 legislative seat legislature. So there are only 11 basic people going to be elected. All right, so the thing you do in a proportional representation system is first off, you figure out how many parties there are. In this case, I've made 4 fake parties, and they each have a certain number of candidates, basically just enough so I could get the math right. And what you need to do then is figure out how much of a percentage each of the parties actually got of the total vote, and then figure out which person within the party actually got those seats. So the way to start this whole thing, so you can answer these questions over here, is first off figure out the percentage of the vote each of the parties got. So the Christian Democrats got 37 million votes, 37, divided by 80 million total votes, they got 46.25% of the vote. Same thing for the Social Democrats. They got 30 million votes of the 80, and that is 37.5%. Greens, 7.5%. Liberal Party, 8.75%, because I got a little more than the Greens. Once you have the percentage of the vote, then you can multiply the percentage times the number of seats, 11 seats here. For those of you guys who forgot how to do the math on that, you just move the decimal place to the left and make it 0.4625 times 11, and that will give you an answer of 50875. So they would effectively get 5 seats and a little section, a little bit of change. All right, same thing is true for the Social Democrats, of course. 37.5 times 11 seats is 4 and some fraction of seats. The Greens and the Liberal Party each get a fraction of a seat, so they don't have a guaranteed full seat like the Christian Democrats and the Social Democrats. Obviously, there are 5 full seats and 4 full seats here, which leaves a total of 2 seats left, so we have to figure out who gets those 2 seats. It's pretty straightforward because you just start picking the next largest fraction or the next largest decimal amount here and just go down the order and figure out who gets it. So obviously the largest fraction that's not a whole is the Liberal Party at 0.9625, so that'll round up to 1. Same thing is true for the Greens, and then these 2 little fractions up here are too small and we're already out of seats. And so what that works out to is that there will be 5 seats for the Christian Democrats, 4 for the Social, 1 for the Green, and 1 for the Liberal Party. And then it's totally straightforward to figure out who actually gets those seats. You look within the party and see how the Christian Democrats ranked their choices to be their, people representing the Christian Democratic Party in the legislature, and you just kind of go down until you run out of, people who can win. In this case, poor F. Sanchez has the smallest number of votes in the Christian Democrats, so he doesn't get elected. O. Osborne has the same problem as Social Democrats. The Greens and the Liberals each only get 1, so only their top vote getters get it. Diisco and Afriki are the only people elected. So that's the answer to question 11. You can actually just star it like that and write like Q1 and just draw an arrow to it, and that'll answer question 1. All right, next question is draw a diagram of the legislative chamber of Denmain from left to right, showing the number of seats each party holds. You already know how many seats because you figured that out already. Now you just have to draw the, the political spectrum. And so I've, on the worksheet, told you who has, which position, basically, center, right, left, and all that business. And so you just put them in that order. And so the Christian Democrats, center right, so they're the most right party. The Social Democrats are a left party, and you can see the Greens are the far left party, so you have to write them over there. And the Liberal Party is in the center, obviously. So, and then you just write the number of seats below them like that, and that way you can tell, what it would look like in the actual legislative chamber. You'd have a whole bunch of Christian Democrats on one side, big chunk of Social Democrats on the other, some Liberals sitting in the middle, a Green sitting on the left. All right, so that is what you are doing for question 2. That's the answer to question 2 right there. Question 3 is trickier. Assuming that big parties would rather control small parties than share power with another big party, that the parties of Denmain will only work with people near them on the political spectrum, what's the most likely ruling coalition? So in order to win an 11-seat legislative vote, you would need 6 votes, because that's 1 more than half, and so you'd win the election for a prime minister or for a law or anything. And obviously the Christian Democrats with 5 need some help. They're the biggest party, and they only need to pick up one additional seat. They can obviously pick up the Liberals, and they're right next to each other on the political spectrum, so that makes sense. You might think they could pick up the Greens, but the Greens and the Christian Democrats are politically very different. That's why they're on opposite sides of the spectrum. So that coalition is pretty much never going to happen unless there's some kind of weird emergency happening somewhere in this political fake reality. The other possible coalition, though, is that the Social Democrats, the Liberals, and the Greens could get together, and they would also have 6 seats. And so in some ways, the Liberals are kind of the kingmaker here. They get to decide which way they want to go. If they go left, there will be a left coalition if they can convince the Greens to go along. If they decide to work with the Christian Democrats, game over, there will be a right-wing coalition. All right, so the obvious coalition is actually the easiest coalition, just the Christian Democrats and the Liberals, and that would be the right coalition. So that would be the obvious answer, number 3. You could also have answered this left coalition as a possible answer, and that would also be fine. That's why the why here in the answer is really important. Depends on what you explain. All right, question 4 is really dependent on the why part. Using the same assumption as 3, who's the most likely prime minister? And there are 4 possible answers here. So actually, there's kind of 5. So the Liberals and the Christian Democrats, if they form a coalition, the Christian Democrats are obviously the really big party. And so they can probably throw their weight around and get the prime minister's position because they're the biggest party in the coalition. And so if you look at the Christian Democrats, the most important Christian Democrat is F. Sinatra, the chairman of the board. He's got 10 million votes also. And the Liberals, their biggest candidate, F. Reekie, he's only got 3, and that's less than, this giant amount of Christian Democrats and way less than F. Sinatra. So F. Sinatra would probably be the prime minister in this fake situation. The other possibility, though, might be that the Liberals are like, we'll only join you if you give us the prime ministership, in which case F. Reekie would become the prime minister of a right-wing coalition, but the Christian Democrats would have to really need the Liberals for that to get pulled off. So it's probably going to be F. Sinatra. In a left-wing coalition, same kind of logic holds. It's probably going to be a social democratic prime minister, and that in this case would be L. Ulrich. And so he would then be prime minister. But again, F. Reekie could say, if you don't make me the prime minister, I'm going to go with the Christian Democrats, and F. Reekie could become prime minister. Or the Greens, in some weird situation, D'Isco could be like, I demand the prime ministership, and he might pull that off. But most likely it would be L. Ulrich if it was a left-wing coalition. And the interesting thing is the more likely coalition and the more likely prime minister is F. Sinatra in a right-wing coalition. And even though he gets less votes than L. Ulrich, because he's the largest vote getter, or the most important character anyway, in the Christian Democratic Party, that would be the prime minister. So 4 really does kind of depend on which kind of coalition you picked and what logic you explained. I gave you all the possible options. All right, so that's the answer key, and that's how you do these kind of things. You have another one coming, and make sure that one gets done, because that's the one I grade for real. This one is just for practice. See ya. Bye.